Okay. So unfortunately, while everybody's eyes was turned to Iran, Cuba is still suffering under the blockade being implemented on them by America's pedo billionaires. It's very, very sad. They really, you know, they're running out of gas and oil again. They like I know that they've tried to electrify their grid with like green energy like as quickly as they can, but I mean it's impossible, I think, to get it 100% like anytime soon. I think they're at 30% or so of their grid is you know solar power or whatever, but they still need a lot of gas and oil to function. From the last time that we like learned about Cuba, people, a lot of reporters and stuff went on that flotilla. They talked about the situation there. They talked about how the hospitals go out of power all the time. It's just really not a good situation. So, and then also I know that a Russian tanker had gotten through the blockade and given Cuba some oil, but apparently they're out again. So you need a steady flow of it. It's like it's a modern country. It needs oil and gas to survive. So let's go ahead and watch this video, and we'll see what's going on, and you know hopefully something can be done about it by other countries or something. But
let's update you on what is happening in Cuba. There have been some rare protests that have broken out there in the capital, Havana. The island is grappling at the moment with its worst power blackouts in decades. It's been triggered by a US blockade. We saw hundreds of angry Cubans pouring onto the streets in several neighborhoods late on Wednesday. You can see them here. They're so angry about these fuel shortages. They've blocked roads. They burnt rubbish on the streets, as you can see. This marks the biggest single night of demonstrations in Havana since the energy crisis took hold in January. Well, earlier, Cuba's energy minister said the island had completely run out of fuel, oil and diesel, leaving the power grid in a critical state as this blockade from the US is really squeezing the country's supply. Our global affairs reporter, Mimi Swaby, is with me, who's been looking into this and covering it for weeks. It was moving to this point, wasn't it, Mimi? We've been reporting on the shortage.
Well, and also with the war in Iran, the global oil supply is down like 20%. So, even if countries did want to break the American siege and go in, most countries right now are going to be like, we can't afford it right now. We need this oil for ourselves. Like, so like Cuba was like, man, like I don't know. Like the only country that might do something about it is Russia, because they produce a lot of oil and are in the past we're generally looking for places to sell it, but now that America has relieved a lot of their sanctions on Russian oil because of this oil shortage, they probably don't feel like they have to sell to like Cuba or anything anymore, and they might sell to, but I don't know. I don't know how deep Cuba and Russia's like alliance, or what, if you want to call it that, really are. Like I don't know if Russia would go out on a limb for Cuba or not. My guess is probably no. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's rough.
Just for a long time, and now they've run out of fuel.
Exactly. The energy minister, Vicente de la Olive, has finally said the island has no diesel, it has no oil, and has very limited gas. He said the power grid was in a critical state. This has been exacerbated, this fuel shortage, by the US blockade, threatening tariffs to any country selling oil to Cuba. So it's once very kind of prominent suppliers, Venezuela and Mexico, haven't sent any fuel to the island. Only one oil tanker, a Russian oil tanker, has been permitted to pass through this blockade. But according to the energy minister, the delivery from that oil tanker has now run out, leaving the island in complete darkness, so to speak.
So complete darkness, this seems maybe like an obvious question, but what has it meant for life there? How are people getting by?
People are really struggling. For months now, the situation has been...
There were a whole bunch of reporters who went in that flotilla, lady. Like, we already saw what it's like, and it's not good. The story that sticks out the most to me is the story that Ryan Grimm told about the hospitals. Whenever the power goes out, they have generators, but it takes a few minutes for the generators to come up. So whenever the power goes out, they have to go down to the NICU or whatever, where they keep all the babies, and they have to go down, or like all of the the babies who are like premature or whatever, and they have to go down and they have to manually pump their oxygen and stuff. And it's like like it's terrifying, because if you mess up, that baby is dead. This is all completely manufactured by America. This is not there. They would be just fine if they were allowed to just trade with countries like a normal, sovereign state or whatever. If they were just allowed to trade with countries, that all of these hospitals would be working fine. Their economy would be booming. All of the people would be, living the good life, succeeding. Like, it would be amazing. And we just subject them to this incredibly barbaric, like, punishment, all because they had the audacity to have a revolution against like our elites or whatever, owning all of their like essentially pushing America out of the, or like American billionaires out of their country a long time ago. And now it's like and now just because, like, I don't know, I guess they're communist or whatever, we feel the need to go in and fuck with them and just try to, kill as many elderly and like babies that we possibly can in their country. It's absurd.
Been deteriorating at a quite rapid rate. I've heard from residents that they're waking up in the early hours of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., when there is a brief moment of electricity to do their daily tasks, be that cooking for the next day, washing clothes. People are enduring prolonged blackouts. These can last up to 22 hours, commonly in Havana and the neighboring, the kind of the outskirts of the neighborhoods there. That is on top of basic goods being scarce. There really aren't many basic goods and food. Many individuals are saying they are living solely off bread. And anything you try and preserve in fridges, you can't preserve it because there's no energy to preserve it. Solar panel has been something that many people have been talking about. We've had a few humanitarian aid deliveries. For example, from Mexico, the energy minister has also said from China has delivered some solar power equipment. However, solar panel is very expensive to start, and it's also quite weather intermittent. So that is a source of potential energy, but at the moment, people are really just struggling to live their daily lives.
And that desperation, Mimi, has turned into anger as well. How unusual is it to see protests like we saw last night?
These protests are really unusual. They mark the biggest single demonstration since this crisis was exacerbated in January. Any political dissent is largely quashed by the authoritarian regime.
I mean, I'm always highly skeptical about these protests, man. I know the CIA has a lot of people in Cuba. Okay. I'm sure that there are some people, particularly younger people who might, be radicalized against their government because they see, the prosperity that's just like so close, like in Florida or whatever, like it's like 90 miles away or whatever. And then they have to live in, essentially a state of destitution that's being imposed on them by America. And so I'm sure that there are some people, like a lot of people out there who are, don't have a favorable view of the Cuban government. However, it is like the CIA has a huge operation in Cuba, and a lot of these I always assume that a lot of these like protests are being led by like CIA operatives, just because like that has been a huge part of it in the past. Like that's how the CIA operates in a lot of like Latin American countries. So that's kind of my thoughts on that, at least.
Regime in Cuba, and we've seen many political prisoners detained now for months, years, some of them without being charged with anything. So the majority of challenges to the Cuban government come from outside the island, and people just want change. They're really hungry for change, and it comes off the back of the US renewing its offer for $100 million humanitarian aid if Cuba makes some meaningful changes to its communist system.
That it won't change that much. 100 million. I mean, sure, it would be great. However, it won't change that much. They need a lifting of the blockade. I think they've offered a lot of concessions to the West as well, in terms of like allowing more capitalists in, allowing more pedo billionaires in to skim off like super profits off the top of their corporations or whatever. Like, I think that they have offered that to America. I don't think America. Honestly, I think America is a brutal, barbaric country that wants to see these people suffer, like out of spite, out of being a dying empire and lashing out for all of these reasons. Like, I just think that America is a vindictive, spiteful, hateful, evil country when it comes to Cuba, and it's very, very sad to watch. But okay.